Hello, this is Evan Rogerson, and I'm Motorgang here, and today I'm going to be breaking the pushback game manual update, which dropped about 4 hours ago. So I'm going to go through, break down the entire manual, all of the things, and then give some of the strategies that I think will be effective this year for this manual. Do keep in mind that this is version 0.1 if you're watching this like later in the year. I'm making this video in May, so a lot of this information will probably be outdated later in the year. I'll have a pinned comment down below as throughout the season I will continue to do update videos covering the updates to the game manual. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss those, and like and comment in order to please the YouTube algorithm. I'm sure for many of you this will be my first video of mine that you see. I love to make videos like this, just going through and explaining things, especially to help out newer teams. So stick around for the channel if you want to see more like this. But let's go ahead and get into it, because there is a lot to cover. A lot of very good, a lot of very bad. So let's kind of get into it. So we have the standard table of contents, and like quick rule tab, so if you're ever trying to find a rule in the tournament, these are all like hyperlinked. You can just click on them. So the introduction, this is just like the GDC explaining a bunch of useless information, like probably just for like, I don't know, investors. It's more than just a game. It's an opportunity to develop skills that will shape the problem solvers and innovators of tomorrow. Stuff we don't really care about. Now, primer is basically if you've watched the reveal video, which if you haven't already, up in the top right corner, I'll put a link to my breakdown of that up there. And basically it just covers the basic information. Now, this is kind of a weird thing, the vibe here. So this is basically saying, a note from the GDC. They basically say here, the rules contained can be thought of constraints that define the game. Teams can play by the rules. However, there's no right way to play the game. No hidden restrictions, assumpted, or intended interpretation beyond what is written here. Basically, what they're saying here is, as long as we don't say it's not illegal, it's going to be legal. And it's up to you, the competitors, to find the constraints that best suit your team goals and ambitions. And this is where things get really weird in this game manual update. So they're basically saying, like, there's no right way to play the game. Do it however you think works best. And then the next one is, how we want the game played. You must play the game that we want it. And basically they're saying, if you do not play the game that we want it to be played, we will change the rules. It's just very weird and jarring. And basically that they're saying they want you to play offensively. They don't want you just sitting at the goals or like blocking a bunch of balls and like trying to hoard a bunch of balls all at once. So basically the things they might change are add a possession limit to the balls if teams hoard too much. Stop you from just camping in front of the goals. If that's an issue, I guess that's camping in front of the goals. And then that's the size constraints that lets you block off goals potentially. But it's just very weird that here they're like, do whatever you want. And then here it's like, if you do not play the game, we will change the rules to make you play it how we want the game played. Yeah, I don't know. It's just really weird. There is no right way to play, and then how we want the game played. But anyways, I guess if you do build your strategies around these, just keep in mind that the game manual updates might change these strategies to make them no longer legal, which is right here. One cool thing that they've added is now there's a 1-week grace period from when the manual update drops to when it actually goes into effect. So if you do build your robot around these and they change it, you will have at least 1 week grace period, so that's good. So you won't ever have it where the manual drops, and most of these are Tuesdays, so you'll most likely have it where it drops on a Tuesday, and then, you know, you have until next Tuesday, so really that gives you like a little over a week, because most tournaments are going to be on Saturdays. The schedule looks pretty similar to what they've done in years past. They've got the major updates in June, September, January, and April, so that's all pretty typical, and usually they drop those around 3 p.m. Oh, these are Thursdays this year. Okay. And then there's just links to all the other stuff. These links aren't really going to be super useful right now. Like if I look at the guide to judging link right there, this is going to be the guide for judging for last season, that being high stakes. So I assume throughout the year these will get updated to be the proper links. But as of right now, these links aren't too useful. Obviously some things like youth protection policy aren't really going to change. So basically 44 of each type of block, the loaders, the goals, basic stuff. So we got our 4 goals all in the middle here, we got our 4 loaders around the edge, we got the driver stations, and then we got the parking area. He stuck with these same style of diagrams that they had for the high stakes game manual, in which to just kind of show what's on top, which I personally have a hard time like interpreting these quickly, but they seem to like them, so I guess that's what we get. But yeah, so this kind of helps you show what the setup is going to be like for the game. For stacking, that's where referees will typically be positioned, the audience view, which doesn't really matter because the field is symmetric. And these general definitions have all seemed to stay pretty similar to stuff in years past, so nothing really to break down or dissect there. Next up, we have the times for autonomous versus driver control. This is all the same, still 15 seconds autonomous, 1 minute 45 driver. And for VEXU, it is still the 30-second autonomous. That was not just for high stakes. For people unaware, VEXU used to be 45 seconds. High stakes was the first year it went down to 30. And the same goes for the isolation period for VEXAI. Definitions for students all seem to be pretty similar. Same for teams and roles on the teams. So I'm just kind of going to skim past those. Obviously, if you've never competed before, those are things you'll specifically want to look into, as they are very important, but not critical to how you build your robot. That's more of how coaches should be assigning teams and such. And then that's your, it looks like an updated flowchart, but it's the same information, just looks a little bit nicer, I suppose, for what happens when you violate a rule. Also, apologies if my voice sounds a little bit off. I'm a tad under the weather coming back from Worlds. Probably picked up some disease from somewhere around the world and did not get enough sleep. So, not the best. But anyways, we have our standard blocks, which I'll probably be calling an assortment of things in this video. Blocks, balls, buckyballs. I'll probably accidentally call them rings or tri-balls a couple times too. And we have our control zone, which is basically the middle section of the goals. For the long goals, that can hold up to 3 blocks, not 4 blocks, as it looked like in the video. And then the control zone for the middle goals is the entire goal, which can fit 7 blocks. And then whether or not a goal zone, like as seen here, is controlled is whoever has the majority. And while these are odd numbers, 3 and 7, there's no guarantee, like the goal might only have 2 balls in it. So, and one of them might be red and one of them might be blue, so there won't be necessarily always a controlled. But if you have the majority, you will get the controlled. I imagine most matches, they will either be controlled or just like no balls in the goal. Like it's pretty easy to just throw 1 ball in there. I'll kind of get to that more in a bit later. Then we have the goals. The long goals are roughly 4 feet long with a roughly 1 foot covered area in the middle that you can't easily reach into to pull balls out of. And then the shorter goals are about 2 feet long, and they're not completely covered, like you can see here. That is like completely covered all 4 directions on this long goal. And while the smaller goals, they do have like some protections, like you probably can't just pull up. You could definitely still like reach something in through the top and move the balls around. And they don't have the same protections, which we get to in, I believe, SG10. And we have our match loaders on the side of the field, and these can hold up to 6 balls officially. Then we have our match loads, which you get 24 match loads, 12 per alliance, and those are not tied to a specific alliance station. They're just in general. Parked robots relates to the parking zone, which again looks very similar to the spin-up barrier. And the parking zone is roughly the size of a robot base at max size. So should be pretty easy to fit 1 robot inside. 2, you'll definitely have to try a little bit harder. Alright, now we go into scoring. Also, anywhere you see this little VEXU logo, that means that it's different for VEXU, and I'll kind of cover that as it pops up near the end. Autonomous bonuses were 10 points, so there's some information there. And then regular blocks are worth 3. The controlled zones in the long goal are 10. The upper middle goal is 8. The lower middle goal is 6. And then a single park is 8, and a double park is 30 points. This is the same as last year. Stuff's evaluated after the match ends for the scoring, or after autonomous ends, and it's after 5 seconds. So, like, if your robot falls down or something after 5 seconds, it still counts as scored. Blocks are considered scored inside of goals if they are not touching the ground. So this ball is touching the ground, so it does not count as scored. That ball is not touching anything, and it's inside the pipe, so it's good. So it has to be inside the goal. Cannot be contacting a robot that is the same color as a block. So when the end of the match comes, make sure that you're not accidentally touching any of your own blocks. Then for controlled, again, you need to have a majority of the balls within inside the control zone. and it only fits 3 balls, and it must be fully inside between these 2 white lines, I suppose. So this ball, since it's partially sticking out, it does not count as controlled. And this ball, again, does not count as controlled, but since that ball, you can't see, it's not intersecting that white line at all, it does count as scored. And basically this red box says is the head referee cannot determine whether or not a block is considered scored, then they should give it the benefit of the doubt and say that it is scored. I'm sure there are going to be plenty of teams throughout the season that insist that the block wasn't scored when it actually was, and vice versa, and there's going to be a whole lot of teams saying they were robbed of a match or whatever. But it should also be pretty simple considering they only fit 3, so it should be pretty obvious which 3 are inside the most, assuming these are getting like squished together inside. Then for parking at the end of the match, this is a pretty basic definition. Just have your robot inside the space and don't be touching anything outside. You cannot be touching the field elements, which does not include the field perimeter, so you can still be touching the field perimeter. Field elements, I'm not sure what you would do, as those are like game objects that are mounted to the fields, like the match loaders, the goals. That does not include things like the balls. So you can be touching game elements. That's not at all related to this. And you can, of course, be touching the park zone, whatever, barrier. And then you must be within the vertical projection. So you can climb up on top of another robot in order to be considered elevated. Then again, autonomous is scored after the match. Autonomous ends, I suppose. And if you commit a violation during autonomous, and both teams do, no autonomous is awarded. It's the basic stuff. If one team gets more points, they get the bonus. If the teams tie, they both get 5 points, because that's half of 10. And then if both teams get violations, nobody gets the points. And while you think that might not matter, that does actually matter for the autonomous points for rankings, which are the tiebreaker after win points. Then in order to get an autonomous win point, you have to score 7 blocks. They must be within 3 different goals. And you must get 3 blocks out of the alliance station, and you must not be contacting the park zone barrier, which you have to start touching this. So it's basically one of the... You can't just purely do solo without interacting with the other team. You do need to at least get your alliance partner off the line. So yeah, you can see here, so you have to start touching that red barrier, which I'll get to in a little bit. And you have to get 3, there's 6 to starting your match load zone. You have to get 3 out of those 6 out of this zone. That shouldn't be too hard to do. You can do that from just one thing. You don't have to do both. Although I imagine you will just for the extra points. And you must score 7. Each robot starts with 1 preload. You have 3 that are very easy to get, uncontested, right there. You already need to be getting 3 out of the match load zone. And then you need to score them across 3 different pipes. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think solo AWP is pretty doable, because you could just be starting touching the line, drive out, pick up your 3 there. That gives you 4. Go score those all in like this long pipe, pick up those 3 balls, and then just put 1 in the top 1 and 2 in the bottom, or the other way around. And then as long as your partner drives off the line, that's solo AWP. So I think AWP is pretty easy to do this year. And of course, if both teams do this, it gives you redundancy, which is really nice because you don't have to score in every single one of the pipes. Just make sure that you coordinate with your alliance partner, because I could definitely see there being issues where both teams try to go to the middle at roughly the same time and end up hitting each other. I'm sure that will happen. It happened so many times with the alliance stake this year. That's kind of it. And then as with last year, in the September update, so not from all of America, all Worlds qualifying events will have a harder criteria, which I imagine will be more similar to the VEXU criteria, which I will get to later. And again, that's just going to be standard changes, like they're not going to be adding brand new things like you must balance yourself on top of the bar. It's going to be things like score more blocks. Maybe they move it from 3 to 4. Probably just more blocks, though. Safety rules, yeah, whatever. It's the usual. Don't do anything stupid. General rules and general game rules have been broken up. General rules is also don't do anything stupid, but not necessarily safety. Basically, be nice. Don't get Chinese mentors to build your robot for you. Don't do anything stupid. Don't have multiple people on, or I guess one person on multiple teams. And then general game rules is more like robot related things. Like you must stay within the driver's station. Your robot needs to be at the match. You must be ready to play. Have your pneumatics charged. Keep your hands out of the field other than when you're doing match loads. You get a replay, not for white screens, but for things like if the field's set up wrong, or like it sure would be strange if you were running qualification match 3 at the Riverbot signature event, and after the match was scored, you noticed there were only 4 mobile goals in the field. That would certainly be strange, and something like a major field fault, or like it obviously wasn't set up if there's only 4 mobile goals in the field, then you can get a re-1. You'll be disqualified and not get any win points, autonomous points, or strength points if you commit a major violation. You can get 1 3-minute timeout in between elimination rounds. Don't intentionally detach parts. Don't intentionally clamp your robots to the field. This is field elements, not game elements. So you can like grab onto the buckyballs or whatever, although you do still have to let those go at the end of the match without turning power back onto your robot. But don't like clamp yourself onto the goals to try and stay near the end or something. Red Alliance has the right to place last, which shouldn't be. It might become relevant with Goal Rush. There isn't really any goals to rush this year, but we do have these balls that start right on the line right there, so I could potentially see, and down there too, maybe some teams have disruptor autons that try and like get to those balls before the other team and whatever. Don't interact with your robot during the autonomous period, unless you're VEXU when doing match loads. Don't cheat during autonomous. Don't destroy other robots. Very sad. Offensive robots get the benefit of the doubt, so if referee has to make a call, they'll go with the whatever was trying to score, not the one playing defense. You can't force an opponent into a penalty. No like holding, trapping, pinning, whatever for more than 5 seconds. And then don't use blocks as gloves. Use them to play the game. All pretty standard stuff if you've done a game before. So yeah, like don't throw the blocks across the autonomous line to mess up with your opponents or whatever. Now, this is where the actual good stuff, the specific game rules. This is the juicy details. So starting the match, again, you have to start in size. You must be contacting your preload. You can't be touching the goals or the loaders. Can't touch the other team's other alliance robots. Must be stationary. Can't have stuff already moving. And then you must touch the alliance zone. So not up against the wall, up against the alliance zone. Which you can see here, we have 2 robots right there. And then over here, we have 2 robots right there. I would be careful about starting your robots like this. This seems bad. That seems more good. That also seems good. Because if you want to put your robot right down in the middle for your autonomous routine to work, that's like means your opponent has to start off to the side. So I think it's better if both teams just like leave the don't go past the middle of the line for your autonomous routines, because the other team probably wants to start there. And there's no real reason to anyways. If you like, you can start yourself already lined up. Like that robot and that robot are pretty much already lined up with their goals. Or yeah, maybe start like this guy and start pointed at those buckyballs so you can go and rush them. Or maybe pointed right at your match load zone. So there's really no reason to want to start in the middle anyways. And I would definitely recommend teams don't do that. But yeah, that's basically just the starting criteria. Alright, now moving on to one of the more controversial rules is the SG2 horizontal expansion rule. The GDC did not write this rule well. They either made some math errors or they just did not word it clearly. So, once the match begins, robots may expand horizontally beyond the 18 by 18 inch starting size within the following criteria. Alright, makes sense. Now, no horizontal dimension may exceed 22 inches at any point during the match. Now, they've done similar things like this with 36 inches. And let me kind of pull up some Google drawings to show you. So here we go. We got our robot that's 18 by 18. Now, with the regular 36-inch expansion rule that we've had in years past, here you go. We got a nice 36-inch line. And really, you can think about this as like 36 inches, point to point. So, like, you know, if you're there, you could expand out to there, but then it would also like arc around you like in a circle. You could expand out to there, you could expand out to there, you could expand out to there, whatever. But it's not quite a circle, because you could also make your robot triangle shaped. Like, let's say that's 36 inches. Then you could also go from like there to there. And then kind of go from like there to there. Which would be more than actual the area of like, as long as those are all 36 inches, that would actually give you slightly more space than a circle would. Because if you just drew a 36-inch circle, going from like kind of like that, you can see like when we're like that, that would be outside of like a 36-inch circle diameter, so you can expand more out. But now 22 inches, if you're a math nerd, you may notice is kind of a weird value. So if you look up Pythagorean theorem, and we have an 18-inch side length and another 18-inch side length, astute viewers may notice that that is a 25-inch diagonal. And if we go back to our Google drawing over here, if you make your robot 18 inches by 18 inches, which you can see right there, so like if that side length is 18 and that side length is 18, and you run that diagonal, that is 25 inches. That is illegal. So your robot cannot start as 18 by 18 by 18. Now, there are still reasons why you could still use the 18-inch expansion, like if you made your robot T-shaped. Let me just do a text box. T. So if you made your robot just a giant T, that much, like a T, like that distance could be 22 inches, and that distance could be 22 inches, and that one like 18, and that one 18. So you could have something sticking out like that, but if you just do an 18 by 18 block, that is illegal, as the rules currently stand. I do not know if that is the GDC's intent or if this is a typo or something. But basically, if you want your C value to be 22, I believe it's around a little over 15. Yeah, you can see, maybe it was 16. Yeah, you can't go 16, somewhere in between like 15 and 16, whatever square root of 22 is. So yeah, your robot can only be about, if you don't want to expand at all, you can only be about 15.5 by 15.5 inches there, which is significantly smaller. I'm sure there are going to be, assuming the rule doesn't get changed, plenty of teams that show up with an 18 by 18 inch robot and they illegally horizontally expanded before the match even began. So kind of weird there. And for reference, 15.5 by 15.5 is about a 30-inch hole C, a 30-hole long C channel by a 30-hole long C channel. And then you could still technically expand it a little bit more, because if we were saying that's our 22 inches right there, remember this would like arc out like a circle, like out to there. So you could still have something like sticking out in front of the robot just a little bit, because it's point-to-point expansion. You still can kind of get that T shape a little bit. Hopefully I explained that. It's kind of weird. And it's the distance between any 2 points on the robot, including diagonals. Like, they make it very explicit that it's diagonals. So that's kind of weird. So you can't really horizontally expand at all. In fact, you cannot even horizontally expand to the max of your starting size. And again, as long as it's like, if it's like a zip tie or loose wire sticks out, they're not going to DQ you for that. As long as it's not for strategic gain. Now, vertical expansion is chill. Just don't go more than 22 inches tall. We like that. That's pretty chill, easy to understand. And basically just don't be taller than that throughout the match. Next one again, SG4, fairly simple. Don't throw the blocks out of the field. And this is the same rules about what happens if you throw them out as early season high stakes. Meaning if you throw more than 3 blocks out, doesn't matter what the color is, this will escalate to a major violation, and any block afterwards will be a DQ. So you throw out 2 blocks, you're fine. You throw out the 3rd block, yeah, that's still fine, I believe. And then after your 4th block gets thrown out, that is an instant DQ, regardless of anything else. And if you're 3 or more blocks in a single match, you just instantly get a single DQ. So you be careful not to throw blocks out of the field. I don't think that should be a huge issue. I might cover that a little bit later in my strategy, just where you might accidentally do that. But, I mean, all the scoring zones are pretty far from the wall. And yeah, you get your 1 preload. It must start touching your robot, can't touch another robot, and you can't already be scored. Or inside the match loader. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. And if your alliance partner doesn't show, you can use it as a match load. Possession is unlimited. You can push, do whatever you want to as many blocks as possible, as long as you're within size. So the GDC lied when they said, I'll put up the clip there. Yeah, they lied when they said that expansion was tied to the number of things you were possessing. I don't know if that was something they had earlier and Bailey just forgot that they changed it, or if they were just pulling our leg. and giving us hopes of unlimited horizontal expansion. But anyways, we don't, and it has nothing to do with how many blocks you're possessing. Now this rule is basically the same one as usual. Don't cross the autonomous line. Don't throw stuff across the autonomous line. I do make it clear it's primarily designed for offense, not defense. And then there is the one interesting thing here. And again, it's the same thing that they had for Worlds, where if you like contact stuff on the other side of the line, they get the autonomous win and the autonomous win point. You can grab blocks. Oops, I did not mean to do that. You can grab blocks that start on the line. So like those two blocks right there, you can pick those up because those start on the line. And then the interesting thing is point C. Teams may interact with portions of the goal that are on their alliance's side of the autonomous line, but may not interact with the open portions of the goal on the opponent's side of the field. And given that any violation of a rule, even minor during autonomous, results in the other team automatically winning autonomous, you need to be very careful here. If we zoom in on this view, if you're on the red robot and you're over there, you're chilling. You place a ball right there, that's fine. You place a ball there, that's fine. Like I assume you're pushing it to get it that far in. But if the ball goes to there, that's still fine, because that's, even though it's on the other side of the field, it's still in the closed portion. Once it goes out to there, you instantly lose autonomous, and the other team gets the autonomous win point. As you have now violated point SG7C. So be very careful, it's stupid, because you want to get your balls in there, so you want to like toss them down a little bit, because that gives you the 10-point bonus. So you want to toss them down a little bit. But if you accidentally overshoot, you instantly lose autonomous. So I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, I kind of talked about it in my video. It's better than just saying like, hey, you can chuck the balls down as hard as you can to try and get the other team's balls descored. Because like if you place your ball in the open portion, they cannot legally descore it. You'll automatically win auto if they do. But I also don't like that it's just like shuffleboard, and if you miss, it's really bad. Kind of reminds me of that one VEXU game, Slapshot, I think, from I don't even know how many years ago now. So yeah, there's that, and that's pretty much it. So you can't just like throw the balls down. I'm not sure what it means specifically for the open portions on these goals. I'm guessing because they don't have a specifically covered area, but I'm guessing it just means the area that isn't partially covered at all. So again, just be very careful. Definitely, placing them down is fairly safe. Maybe not trying to shuffle them down. Maybe if you can like get multiple and just kind of push them down slowly, but they do slide out really easily, which I'll get to when I show you guys some videos later. And then yeah, engage with the line at your own risk. If you're both going for stuff on the line, like those balls, and you mess with each other, then you could potentially get a violation, but most likely you're not going to be penalized if both teams are going for it. Yeah. Match loads. Basically, you have your 12 match loads, just put them in the top. Don't do anything silly with them. You can only do it during driver control, except for VEXU. You can't just place them into a loader, and then you can only get them out through the robot through the bottom of the ladder. You can't try and push them out the top. Yeah, it's pretty basic there. And then, don't reach inside enclosed sections of the goals. So these enclosed sections, which are like the covered areas up there, you cannot reach inside of those. And very sad, you cannot do air blast on the goals with pyrotech. You cannot directly affect the positions of the balls, which the strictest interpretation would mean you can't even like, because of the gloves rule, which I want to say is like somewhere down here. Yeah, so because of G18, you have to use blocks to play the game. So technically, pushing balls down the line is illegal as the rules currently stand. I'm 99% sure that's an oversight because they show you doing that in the video and they say that's the cool feature of the game. So you cannot directly affect the balls that are inside there. I assume if you're pushing other balls, it's fine. But you also can't do an air blast where you just unleash 100 psi of force to blow all the balls out without touching them. Yeah, and you can add balls to the open. So right now it's like illegal to actually put balls in the closed sections. Weird, but anyways. You can add or remove balls to the open section of the goal. That's where you're supposed to grab the balls from and take them out of. And then parking zones are protected during the end game. So when you go to park, which I don't know who is parking, I'll kind of get to the strategy later, but I don't think parking is very effective. When you go inside your parking zone, the other team can't touch you during the last 20 seconds of the match, indirectly or directly. They can't touch the park zone or your robots that are parked in the zone. Not robots that are trying to park in the zone that are still on the ground. So, like, if they still got a wheel touching the ground, you could go and hit that wheel. Just be very, very careful playing that, as that could get DQ'd really fast if it's match affecting. And also, referees aren't perfect, and they make mistakes. Now, robot rules, these have stayed pretty similar, but there are a few major changes that I want to cover. You must build the robots yourselves. You can only have one robot. You must pass inspection with your robot. Don't intentionally cheat these rules. Robot must start inside an 18 by 18 by 18 volume. Just be careful that it doesn't have any diagonals longer than 22 that are horizontal plane. Vertically, you can be 22 inches normally. Must have your license plates on. Now, license plates, this is where people are going to get mad. You might look at that and be like, what is that ugly thing? That's an official legal license plate. So basically, 3D printed license plates are not allowed, and you're also not allowed to use VEXU pins to attach your license plates. And you can only have your license plates of that color installed for the match. Even if you can't see the blue license plates, they're covered up in tape or whatever. If you're on the Red Alliance, you cannot have blue license plates on during the match. Additionally, funny point. Where is that? They must be on fixed locations. And they cannot be mounted to parts of the robot that move during the match. So the main intent of this is obviously you can't put the license plates on a 4-bar lift or something that goes up and down. But if your robot moves during the match, you cannot have license plates on that position. Technically, your robot's not allowed to move because it has license plates on it, and your license plates are not allowed to move. So you must build a stationary robot for this game. That will obviously be fixed in an upcoming update. And then no 3D printed license plates, which I will get to later. And here are your specs for how big a license plate must be. So yes, you can get a 5-long plate and put your numbers on it, and that is a legal license plate. This is ugly, and I don't know why they got rid of 3D printed license plates. You're not allowed any 3D printed anything on, which I'll kind of cover in a little bit. Even for decorations. Again, you must let go of blocks after the match, so just make sure that you don't have like a canister that's impossible to reach. Only one brain, power button must be accessible. Have up-to-date firmware, composition template. Motors are still the same, must add up to 88 watts. Only use power from the battery, use VEXNet. Give the radio space, 1 or 2 controllers per robot. Use the V5 system. New VEX parts are legal. And then there are some prohibited items from older VEX parts that aren't legal anymore. Certain non-VEX components are allowed. For the rubber band enthusiasts out there, 170 type rubber bands are now legal. They previously were not. This is like if a 64 size rubber band and a 117B size rubber band had a baby. 32s and 117Bs are 1/8 inch thick, so they're the thinner ones. And then 32s are 3 inches long, 64s are 3.5 inches long, and 117Bs are 7 inches long. So these are like the smaller rubber bands, like distance-wise, and those are the really long ones. These ones are the thicker rubber bands and the longer rubber bands. They have the 1/4 inch thickness of the 64 rubber bands, but the 7 inch length of the 117B bands. So new rubber bands are legal. Those are really nice rubber bands if you use them for other stuff. So I'd recommend definitely buying some. You can still make your own smart cables, limited amount of tape. You can use fasteners, nylon nuts and stuff are still legal. Weight savings is not considered additional functionality. Now, decorations. And custom plastic. This is where things get really weird. So 3D printed parts are not allowed even for decorations. Let me just kind of search that real quick in this other copy. 3D printed. Yeah. So right here you can see prohibited items, 3D printed parts for any purpose, including decorations and license plates. No 3D prints. You can still have them like on a SCUF controller or as like a jig to set up your robot, but no 3D printed parts on your robot at all, under any circumstances. This is kind of weird. I like 3D printed license plates. I think they're cool as decorations. And that's always one of their defenses they've used when like outlawing 3D printing. They're like, oh, you can still make decorations and license plates with it. But now you can't even do that. No 3D printed anything on your robot. So there's that. It shouldn't affect your performance at all, but it still just kind of sucks. So that's where I can put it. And then here we go. Here we go. R25. You guys are making a big fuss out of this. I've seen, like, someone started a petition and it's gotten thousands of signatures. Keep in mind this update's only been out for a couple of hours. Of people saying this rule sucks. I hate this rule. And like the petition's always like, "Oh, have you signed the petition?" It's like, "No. Um this rule is fine. You guys are making a big deal out of it. You're all whiny crybabies." Let me pull up the plastic rule from previous years. So as you can see, this was like a big long rule. It was like an entire page long. And this one is, oops, it's not quite even a page long here. So plastic used to be, as long as it's cut from a single 24-inch sheet, 12 by 24-inch sheet, you can do whatever you want with it. And people took this out of hand. I think that's the main thing. VEX is a closed system. Its main thing is, at least what they're going for, is you buy the kit and you have the parts. It's not something like First where you're machining your robots. And I think the RECF didn't like the extent that that was going on. Now, plastic is much more limited. You are only allowed 12 pieces of plastic. The types of plastic have all stayed the same that are legal, by the way. You can still use, like, Lexan polycarbonate, that's the main one teams use. Delrin's another popular one. No shattering plastics like acrylic or plexiglass. Stop calling plastic plexiglass. Plexiglass is illegal. So you are only allowed 12 pieces of plastic total. And you cannot use these as, well, you can use these as non-functional decorations, but it's kind of stupid if you're using one of your 12 pieces of plastic as a decoration. Additionally, the plastic cannot be larger by 4 inches by 8 inches. So it cannot be a massive sheet of plastic. It has to be fairly small. Now, if you do the math, you actually get about 1.5 times the area of what was previously allowed for plastic. Because now it comes out to, I think, like, I did the math. I don't know, it's about 1.5. I don't remember exactly. It's late at night. So you actually do get more plastic from this rule. It's just that they have to be 12 pieces. And I think this will be good for making you really maximize your usage there. And I think it'll help level the playing field. A lot of teams don't like this, but something a lot of the newer teams don't realize is teams didn't really, this like insane amount of custom plastic machining has only gotten on in the last couple of years. Like I would say spin up was really the first year it started happening. Like tipping point, I can't really think of teams using plastic all over the place, and definitely not like much further before. Like maybe, yeah, for Tower Takeover, teams had just giant sheets for their trays, but those could easily be other things, and plenty of teams did like zip tie trays and stuff. And you must present all these sheets, and the inspectors can count, make sure you have the number of sheets, and verify that they're not over the size limit. It's much easier to keep track of this. There are teams that illegally had more plastic on the robot because with this, it's very easy to like make a plastic map and maybe leave out 1 or 2 small pieces, especially if you have duplicates of them. Teams were cheating around this. It's much easier to just be like, do you have 12 pieces, and are these pieces in size? You can't scale things up or down on your replicas, really. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think this is a good change. But a lot of people don't. So, yeah, have your 1-to-1 scale of the plastic, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Pneumatic stuff is still all the same. They just kind of reworded some stuff. No modifying well, you can modify your non-electrical components. I think that's all the same. And then don't modify your electrical stuff. They have an all-exclusive list of things that you can do to the motors. Like, hey, you can replace the cartridge with another official cartridge, so no 3,600 RPM cartridges. You can still modify the smart cap, and then, yeah, don't modify the other electronics. And that's pretty much it for that. Now, moving on to skills here. Skills this year is basically, it's got the usual stuff like driver skills, programming skills. You have your match, you have stop time for skills. This is the field setup. So it's symmetric, red and blue. You score points for both teams. There's the thing if you want to look at that. All the regular rules still apply. Now the scoring's a little bit different here. I'll kind of skip past that. But the setup, that's basically all the same as before. You get your 1 red preload, and you have your stop time. And there's all the things down there about like rankings if you want to read through those and see specifically what would make me rank higher at a competition than another team. Basically, just score more points and do it as fast as possible. I mean, here, scoring for skills is kind of weird. So all of your blocks count for color. So you're scoring for both red and blue. Now the control zones, which are the inside of the pipes and the entire pipes for the middle ones. So yeah, that little section in there, then that pipe, and then that pipe. If it's all one color, so if the entire bottom goal is filled with blue, then you get a bonus. Which for the center goals is 10 points, because that's 7 balls, and then for the inside ones, those are just 3 balls, and that gets you a 5-point bonus. So you want to like put all the red balls in that one, put all the blue balls in that one, put all the blue balls in that one, put all the red balls in that one, whatever. You basically want to fill the entire goal with just one color. So you probably want some sort of color sort on your robot. Or just a really optimized path. Also, the match load things do start full of things. Then you also get points for clearing the parking zone. So by getting the things out of there, you just get some points, which is pretty easy. And clearing the loading zones. So by clearing out like the match load zones, you can also get points. And then it's 15 points for parking instead of 8. I kind of like skills in that regard. It forces you to basically color sort, play smart. It also have opportunities for push bots. Push bots can get points by just clearing out the logos and the match load zones. It does not look hard to push those things out of the goal. And that gets you 5 points. A simple drive base should have no problems pushing out those and pushing out those. There are going to be teams that have less than 10 points in driver skills. And that just please don't be that team. Please do not be that team. Even emptying the loaders should be pretty easy if you just have a stick on your robot and you turn back and forth. And just ending the match inside that zone is 15 points. Like a simple drive base, 25 points. Real easy right there. There will be teams that have less than 25 points. There will be lots of teams. In fact, it is quite easy to just parked robot. In fact, I believe you can start the match with your robot parked based on the starting criteria. So please do not get low scores in skills. Because you just have to be starting the red perimeter and you can't be touching the other balls. So if your robot's small enough, if it's not, it still should not be hard to park. But yeah, skills this year looks fun in that regards. That's skills. Tournament rules have basically stayed all the same. I don't think I saw any changes. Still like best of 3 for where you would previously have best of 3, 6 qualifications. The alliance selection system's all the same. So nothing really interesting there. They kind of cleaned up and reworded the ties and limit matches lead to limited rematches. I think this is all the same. I've read through, but again, those really didn't pop up too often. Yeah, now moving on to VEXU. VEXU rules have stayed mostly the same, but the field setup is so ugly. Like, what is this? We have diagonal hexagon neutral zone. It's a neutral zone, like you had in like Tipping Point. But it's ugly, and I don't like it. Also, those 2 goals are now entirely in the neutral zone, so the other team can just completely go along and de-score your autonomous points, which I don't like. Especially for AWP, because VEXU gets harder AWP, which I don't know why they did, because VEXU teams suck at programming. Their autonomous win point threshold was like a third of what most of the high school teams are getting. So yeah, the 24-inch robot can basically just expand up to be 24 inches. So there's that. You can match load during the autonomous period on your side of the field. You have different autonomous win criteria. They basically just need to get 12 blocks instead of 7, and they need to clear 6 out of the match load zones. Which doesn't necessarily have to be 1, because you can introduce match loads into 1, so you could just like empty that one, get all the blue balls out, and then get all more out. So yeah. And then robot must park, so you have to park in VEXU in order to get your AWP, because parking does count for points here, I believe. Yeah, basically the standard neutral zone rules. If you're in VEXU, you should probably already know what these are. And then because it specifically said for VRC, you can't start the match moving. VEXU, you can. Like if you have spinning LiDAR modules is the most common one I can think of. VEXU's skills is basically the exact same as VRC. So there's that. Oh no, they use the head-to-head, but they use the skills rules. So field is still set up like that for skills. It's definitely going to want some color sort or something. But then they do still get the same rules as like trying to maximize loading goals and putting all the same color into one type of goal. Standard VEXU tournament rules, they did not add VEXU Alliance selection, sad day. And the manufacturing rules are all the same. Unfortunately, you still cannot use liquid mercury on your robot. Very sad. I think it's somewhere in there, yeah. No liquid mercury. Sad day. You can still use like your springs, hardware, as many motors as you want, as many sensors as you want from third parties, as much pneumatics as you want. This one's kind of different. This is mostly just clarifying that one Q&A. So basically, you can't buy pre-assembled components for sensors or stuff like encoders. Like you can't just buy an odometry pod. You could buy the sensor and you could buy like a wheel from VEX and make your own odometry pod, but you can't buy pre-assembled stuff. Commercially available bearings. So that's pretty much it. Here's your field specs. I can't remember if there was anything else at the end. Alright, so strategy. A couple of things I want to talk about. So first of all, let me just pull up some videos on Discord. So here you go. Basically, it is very, very easy to descore. These videos are courtesy of 355Z. So you can see right there, you can basically just whack into the thing. This is kind of moving on to the strategy section away from the game manual breakdown. So you can just kind of whack into those and all the balls go flying out. And it's the same thing for both center goals. This is just a regular odd drive base. Then this, again, you're not getting all the balls out when you ram into the longer one. But again, this is a regular drive base. If you had something that was pointed specifically to go down that path, I think they would all go flying out. Additionally, you could also make a mechanism like a puncher or some sort of slapper, shooting mechanism basically, that could, I think, very easily descore. So, what are my thoughts on the game? I don't think it's good. Like, there's a lot of issues, like the horizontal expansion rule. Descoring seems way easier, especially when the GDC specifically says, we want people to play the game this way, and it's not about hoarding or goal defense. These are 100% the only good ways to play the game, in my opinion. Because if you leave a goal unattended, that's just going to happen. Like, you can't leave a goal unattended, or that's going to happen to you. So I think, really, the only proper way to play the game is to either not really care about the goals, or because if you see another team has more points from a goal than you just do that. Is to either not let the goals fill up so they can't ram you, or fill up the goal and just protect it. Because if you have one end controlled, the other team can't push all the balls out. So like I think you can see the game shifting into a couple strategies in which like you go, maybe you fill up a long goal all the way, and then you just sit there at the end. And yes, they could knock, like if you're down there and you just fill it up, like you grab 15 balls and you just throw them out there. Yes, they could knock off those ones off the end, but also maybe just don't put all the balls out until the end of the match. And then like last second of the match, you just put out those last 5. That way it's really hard for them to knock them out. Because either they're in their corner, like parking, in which case they won't be able to go over there and descore those. Or if they do descore them, well, they're not in their corner parking. So either way, you kind of win there. Same thing with these center goals. You can park your robot such to block both exits. So I think you could just fill up both of these and sit there. Basically, if one alliance manages to lock down both long goals, they win. Just if you do the math. So I don't think it's a very interesting game. It's very easy to descore, and I don't know how you fix that with rules without it being something stupid like protection times. Just because if you do get the goal, it's just so easy to descore if you're losing. And descoring is that much easier than scoring. It makes it very hard. So maybe parking will be good just because you can't descore the park. But if you do go to park, you let the other team descore any potential goal you had. And like these center goals, it's an 8 and a 6 point bonus just for having the majority. So like you can just fly in there and put one ball in, and even if there weren't any other balls in there, just by getting the top bonus and one ball, that's 11 points for their 8 point park. So So I feel like it's just locking down the goals, and it's not a super interesting game. For VEXU, it'll be interesting just because of the longer autonomous period, and these being in the neutral, which I don't really like. Also, VEXU, you can specialize your robot where one of them is just designed to sit, and maybe the other one does something else. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. Or maybe the other strategy is maybe you do try and hoard. I got this wrong in the initial explanation video. There are 44 balls of each color, which means in order to get rid of half of their balls, you only have to grab 22. Not 44. I don't know where I got that number from. So yes, every ball you grab does take away from their opponents because there's only room for 34 balls to be scored. Yeah. So maybe you do grab and you just grab 20 of their balls and your alliance partner grabs the other 20 of their balls. Or I guess 22. You grab 22 of their balls, your alliance partner grabs 22. They don't have any balls. And again, it's hard to do that because they have access to batch loads. But if you can get all of their balls, or a majority of them, then at the last second, you just put a couple of your balls out and camp at the goal for the last second. Or maybe the strategy is just ignore the goals outside of auto, or win the auto bonus trying to use goals or whatever where you can't descore, and then just double park, like just quickly double park, like, you know, empty out all the goals and then double park real quick. Maybe you could do that faster than it takes for them to rescore. Or maybe just ignore balls entirely, suck up all the balls inside your robot, and just park. I don't know. I imagine the GDC is going to make some fairly significant changes to the rules, so I wouldn't really start designing until you see that 1.0 game manual update. That one right there. I imagine they'll fix and address, or try to fix, a lot of these issues. Because currently I don't think the game is in a good spot. I think it'll be funny, but not necessarily fun to play. Fun to design your robot around, though. Or at least I like sitting around. I like the more strategy-focused games. But also, that does mean you can play smart. If the other team leaves themselves open, there are plenty of opportunities for you to take advantage of that. So it's definitely going to be a play smart game. Not, like, even if you have a good robot, you can totally destroy them if they don't play smart. So that's kind of my thoughts on the game. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe so you do get notified about this update, as that's going to dramatically change the way the game is played. I'm also probably going to have a robot that I'm building, maybe in about a week, that I'll do a quick reveal video for. So I'll see you in the next one.